this week. And I'm going to do like a meet and greet welcome. Like, it won't vote, it won't be official. But I just want to get us going because October.
I remember that
it was. So I want people to know each other and feel comfortable. It should be a good night, I think. I know. Oh, believe me, I feel like it's. Every time we try one step. I was just saying, we are on the fast
How are you
track.
doing? Good, how are you? Good.
Because the soonest we can get in September 24th is reserved for.
Do you want to get involved with this photo book anymore? With the what? Photo book? I did finish it.
Okay.
I need captions
You want to
and
sit?
that kind of stuff. It's the tedious part.
Whatever,
Maybe if you could turn it into a song or something.
whatever you need me to do, I can.
I'll send it on.
Just send it on to me and we'll work on it from there.
Yes, so
Okay.
September 20th, we're still meeting, meet and greet. I'm going to make it like a welcome meeting. Oh, because the deadline for that already passed. Like, there's like a 2 week lag for everything, so I have to go to rules.
That's my goal in my life every day. The problem is it just doesn't get.
Yeah. What a great place to be
I
in
know.
school.
Oh, I know. But I'm feeling positive about we should see how full the agenda is very soon. There'll be, oh, I didn't tell you.
I've been in Michigan a lot.
I know, I talked to him. So
My parents moved, finally moved.
we are.
Actually with my sister. They moved
That's
in
very
with me.
near.
Why is that?
Great, great.
So, they still have the house, which I think is fine. I mean, they don't have any expenses in Michigan, so, you know, it's kind of a little security.
Sure.
They don't feel like they're...
They haven't cut all ties.
Right, right. But, and they'd like to sell it.
So I guess my call was I would rather
At least an hour.
have it out there.
Probably, how long's it, where do you go to work?
One camera. He's gonna set one camera because it's already.
Yeah, and they're just... They're very near Plymouth. They're south of Plymouth.
Right, so that's why.
Or north, no, they're north of Plymouth. They're probably fine.
I got you.
Different drive, at least. I've been driving to Cincinnati for 30-some years.
And it seems to be working out just fine?
There's some issues, but I'll make another visit.
Working out.
Yeah, it's a work in progress.
About this here.
Okay, great.
And where do you want to call on her?
Okay.
Speak. Alderman Burris is on an airplane coming back from Idaho, so she won't be here. Okay. But everyone else is expected.
Where the hell are they?
Well, so I think everyone else is in the building except me and Chris. I can give them calls if you like.
Yeah, 5 more minutes.
Do you want me to wrangle them?
There's no...
Well, the rest of the council's here.
I mean, as far as...
He's been on vacation, and I think this is his first community meeting.
Oh, that's good. Welcome back. So you get dinner?
Bill, where'd you go on vacation?
I know, I go.
How was that?
I think I go.
Oh my God! Sorry for soul that I
So should I interject my neighbor to West Norfolk
Okay. Chair.
Oh, let's see.
Now 6. Oh, actually, we got.
I think he's had it. That's a 1. He's not one to buy them
You feel with that? You see I'm back on my A game.
You saw that.
You're not about to buy it.
I want a red flag. I want to keep it on the outside.
Yeah.
Is that because it was camera?
Okay, thanks.
I didn't bring a pad.
You though. We'll just send it out.
So it's a three-phase.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we use called three-phase.
I got a little pad of paper. I'll be right back. Yeah, I got one.
Yeah.
Now, Walter admitted that he could have taken away with the.
I don't know. That's what they said. That's what
You wanted to waive that as like.
I don't know if
It was dead. It was run over.
Here's the mayor.
I'm glad I never had to waive that.
Practice in my office, it means he's talking, I can eat ice cream.
You get to sit next to me. Aren't you lucky?
We should start now. I think we should start. Oh, sorry. Welcome to the Wednesday, September 5th, 2012 Rules Committee meeting of the City of Evanston. We'll start with, we do have a quorum at this time, so we can now open up to citizen comment. Do we have any people here? I don't think no.
There's nobody signed up.
No one signed up to speak. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of June 4th, 2012.
Second.
Any discussion? Those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The minutes are approved. At this time, I'd like to just interject one thing it's on my mind, and that's sort of calling for a renewed interest, or not interest, but information about the West Nile virus. Some things have come to my attention, and I know that we have quite a few cases here in Evanston, and I'd like to see if we can get more of the community, the schools, the senior homes, and places like that involved in getting the information out. And I think we all sort of have gotten a little comfortable with it, and I think we need to not be afraid of it, but just understand how we prevent it, how we keep mosquitoes away from our homes and away from our schools. So I think Ms. Thomas is here to give us an update from the Health Department on the West Nile virus.
Sure. Good evening. Evanston Thomas, Health Director for the Health Department. Alderman Tundum, you are correct. We have tried to be aggressive in getting information out to the community, particularly those at higher risk for succumbing to West Nile virus. We've done it in several ways. We've made a concerted effort in the areas that have positive mosquito pools that are surveyed and managed by the Health Department, as well as the North Shore Mosquito Abatement District. They have several traps throughout the community to complement the traps that the Health Department has. And when we get a positive pool, the Mosquito Abatement District does test that pool as well as the state Illinois Department of Public Health Department. And when we get a confirmatory laboratory report, we reach out to that resident as it relates to a human case. And so far for Evanston, the numbers are still increasing, which is what we kind of expect during the season. And we currently have 7 positive confirmed laboratory cases in Evanston with 2 pending. And pending just means that we have a preliminary report waiting on confirmatory lab. And what happens when we learn of that is we reach out to the named resident to make contact with them to kind of ascertain if they've been traveling or locations that they've been in, and if they're connected to any of the positive pools that we, the health department, the state lab, or the North Shore Mosquito Abatement have identified. But we don't disclose locations because it creates a false anxiety that if we identify a location, then there's this false anxiety that's heightened, and we don't want that. And then there's this false level of protection if it's not in my area. We do know as public health officials that West Nile virus is unfortunately common during the season, and it is heightened, and there are many variables to why the numbers are so aggressively high this season. They're related to having a very mild winter, and those large Culex mosquitoes did not die off, we're thinking, and so the population has really tripled in volume. We saw our positive pools earlier in the season this year. We think that's related to the very, very hot weather and very, very dry days. And again, we are trying to encourage residents and community members to use preventative measures. And so what we've done is we've had a lot of evening events where the adult mosquitoes are common. They come out at dusk through dawn. And so those evenings where there are movies and concerts, et cetera, we make sure that staff is available to supply additional information, reminding residents to wear long sleeves and protect their environments and protect their bodies, and to wear a repellent. And we're asking residents that if they have flu-like symptoms such as fever or rash, which are common textbook symptoms for West Nile virus, to report to the medical provider. So we are in very close contact with the North Shore Mosquito Abatement, understanding when they have their spray schedule, because there are variables that indicate them to spray in communities in selected areas. And again, we share this information on a daily basis so we can kind of stay in front of it and be proactive to encourage residents to continue to apply those preventative measures to protect themselves and their loved ones until the first frost.
Great. Thank you. I think Alderman Grover has a question.
Director Thomas, my question is, under what circumstances would someone come to be tested specifically for West Nile? Is that a person who's already a patient or already hospitalized? It's not a standard test.
Sure. When someone presents with clinical symptoms, it could be identified rash, it could be a fever, a prolonged unexplained headache. So clinical symptoms would encourage a provider to do that test. It's related to the season as well. So typically, patients who just can't treat at home and end up in the emergency room or in their doctor's office, the provider will test.
When will this additional risk of West Nile subside?
Typically, it's when the first frost occurs.
Thank you.
Alderman Holmes?
Well, I just want to compliment the health department and also, I guess, our PR department, because you've sent out lots and lots of information. And I don't know if other people have done it, but I've always forwarded that out to my residents that are on my list. That's very, very important for us to do our part, too, in getting that information out, because the information is there. You guys have done a really great job of getting that out.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
I would agree.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Thomas? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have a presentation by the Sign Review and Appeals Board and Site Plan and Appearance Review Board. I think Sign Review is first.
Hello, I'm Walter Hallen. I'm the Plan Review and Permit Supervisor in the City of Evanston. I'm also staff to the Sign Review and Appeals Board. I'd like to introduce the chair of the board, Marnie Kadish.
Hi. We have a very simple proposal for the Sign Review and Appeals Board. So I would like to hold off on the presentation. As far as our work plan for 2012 and 13, I believe a proposal was, or a memo was submitted previously. We have 3 key components that we've been working on throughout the course of this year and plan to continue with through next year. So in addition to our kind of business as usual reviews, we've taken up 3 initiatives. One is to do a periodic review of our sign regulations. So taking components of our regulations on a biannual basis, so twice a year, and reviewing those components to make sure that they're up to date with kind of current standards and expectations. An example of that would be blade signs and how those are a much more commonly used sign within the Evanston area, and should be considered, potentially as part of an ongoing or revision to our sign regulations. So taking a look on a regular basis and saying, okay, what's becoming more common as far as standard types of signs, ways to illuminate signs and different components like that, and are there things we need to do to update our regulations? So kind of as a board looking at that on an ongoing basis. The second piece is tied to that, but we recently adopted revisions to our sign regulations. So those included adding blade signs, removing special sign districts, and modifying our standards in reviewing sign variations. And so we've been ensuring that we're following those changes throughout the course of this year. And then we'll continue to do that and potentially draft new changes as we identify new things throughout the coming year. The third piece is that we also recently revised our rules of procedure. So we've already done some of this stuff for 2012, but and so it's just ensuring that we're adhering to those revised rules throughout the course of our meetings over the course of this year and next.
Do you have any questions? The special sign district was kind of an archaic thing. We had one, which was the theater district. It was done before I came to Evanston, and I think it was done specifically for that stretch of the theater. And it required a city council ordinance to make a change in it. So it was a very cumbersome ordinance. And it didn't do anything that our Unified Business Center portion of the sign regulations doesn't do.
But it went on to permit what is, in my opinion, the ultimate blade sign being the Century Theaters. I mean, there were certainly exceptions made for that area that are not limiting, but actually expanding signage in that area.
Yes, it did. Thank God before my time.
Okay.
Well, and now it would still fall under the Unified Sign District.
Yes.
It does, okay. Great. Alderman Grover?
Alderman Rainey.
Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman Rainey.
Well, speaking of the Century sign, it sounds like you're dissing it, but I think it's great. It has really livened the street, and so I have no problem with it, and was part of the evil cabal that supported the whole thing. So, having said that, we've recently been contacted by Hilton Gardens, how they have sustained having absolutely no identity on that street for this long, I don't know. But they are going to be presenting, I don't know if they already have presented their blade sign proposal. Yeah. So how is this all going to affect them? I mean, because I noticed the parameters of a blade sign are 3 feet by 2 feet. That's not going to work.
They stand alone now. They're disassociated with the special sign district.
Right.
I'm sorry. They're disassociated from the special sign district. They do not require a Unified Business Center signage plan because they don't have 4 or more stores. So they're independent all by themselves. They will come in for that sign probably for a variation.
Okay.
I've seen some tentative things, and my concern only would be that it didn't compete with the theater sign, or that it was much smaller in scale and designed to integrate itself with the existing building.
Okay, so it'll just be considered as a variation.
Yes.
Alderman Grover?
And as a reminder, I think we approved sometime last year changes to the standards under which the Sign Review and Appeals Board hears cases, appeals for sign variances, and part of that, I think, must have flowed from the really difficult deliberations on the Office Depot signs. that hamstrung the sign board in a lot of ways about what it could and could not do. And so I think we have now a more flexible standard, but one that the board can work with. And you worked very hard. Those were hard deliberations, I'm sure, on the Office Depot signs with, I think, largely a very good result. So thank you very much.
Alderman Rainey?
One other thing, could you talk a little bit about why blade signs can't be illuminated? I mean, I'm looking for excitement and an exciting, vibrant, lively district where there are blade signs.
And I think it would vary based upon the location and the district. So I think for that type of thing, it would still come through as a variation, whereas a blade sign, and then we could review it based upon the location and if it fits with that type of atmosphere and if their need is required. The blade signs that we have incorporated into the regulations are kind of that standard, just location-based sign of a certain size, so that if someone wants to do that, they don't need to go through the formal variation process.
I see. Okay, I understand better now.
The comparison I make is when people ask about our sign regulations is to look at Western Avenue in Chicago and look at our downtown area.
Yeah.
You can see the effect of our sign regulations. They make it a much more human scale, and there's not blaring lights in your eyes. So that I'm sure a small sign that was illuminated, would be actively considered by the board.
Or in a solid business district where there are no residents. I mean, I think you need to treat those areas differently. I think so.
Madam Mayor?
I just wanted to ask you to please thank everyone on the Sign Appeals Board for me. I greatly appreciate all of you doing that work.
I, too, would like to thank you. I was on that board at one time, and I know that my partners on that board did a lot to help companies and people that were applying actually improve their presentations and at the same time fit in within the code or to come up with a variance that was pleasing and aesthetic. I know we spent a lot of time or often would refer to precedents in terms of allowing variances, and I think that would possibly apply to the Hilton sign since it does have another similar extended lit blade sign at the other end of the street. It's almost like a bookend. I think there is a certain naturalness to it. So, Alderman Rainey?
Something that I have noticed, especially on Howard Street, on both sides of the street, when a business leaves and they leave those horrible signs up, and the place doesn't get rented for several years and the sign gets in disrepair, I would like to see the approval of all new signs include a requirement that the owner of the property be responsible for removing the sign within a certain number of days.
We have that in the sign regulations. We have 30 days on an abandoned business. The sign is supposed to come down.
Well, okay, let's put another line in there that we must enforce that, because we do not enforce that.
With adequate staff, we could, yes.
Well, I'll be glad to join the staff to point out where they need to be removed. But how does it read? I missed that. It wasn't in the sheet.
There is a sign when a business leaves, it's a clause in the sign regulations that gives it 30 days to remove the sign. We do enforce that, by the way. We do go after people and have them remove their signs. Okay.
No, don't.
We have done it. I know. Carlton Williams is very careful on this.
All right, how do we enforce it, and who do we require to remove the sign? The owner of the property?
The owner of the property, yes. That's the only one left,
I was going to say, do you think maybe part of the issue might be if they don't know the business is closed? So maybe that needs to be...
Who doesn't know?
Well, the staff, if he's saying they enforce it, if there's some that haven't been removed, maybe the staff didn't know that those buildings were closed. So maybe we just need to let them know.
If we see it, we contact them.
Good point.
Yeah.
Alderman Grover?
I think Mr. Hallen, Madam Chair, are looking for a approval of the Sign Review and Appeals Board work plan. I move approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we have the Site Plan and Appearance Review Board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the Rules Committee. Steve Griffin, Director of Community and Economic Development. One of the fundamental goals of the City Council is to improve the development review process and look at design review improvements. When SPARK was historically constituted back in 1989, it was to ensure interdepartmental cooperation among projects and to enhance customer service and information sharing among the applicant and agencies. City Manager Bobkowitz knows this. I've paid particular attention to this one because this is one that I've been quite used to working with over the years, and our work plan is a little bit different than the other groups have brought to you, because we want to focus or reconstitute this group as more of a problem-solving interagency consensus group. I think I love the way SPARK is basically set up, and it has every opportunity, but some of my observations include that when these agencies are there, they're seeing these plans for the very first time. They've never gotten a copy ahead of time. They don't have a heads up. They haven't had a chance to review it. So we wanted to reconstitute a process that where these plans would be submitted ahead of time, and that the agencies would then have a chance to basically talk among themselves and work together in the review. Sometimes a utilities comment, for example, trips the need for a fire hydrant, and the fire hydrant location may mess up where the entrance location is. And it sounds minor, but sometimes that could take a few extra days or weeks to work out. So what we wanted to do in this work plan, and to try it out for this next year, is to require advanced plan submissions so that when we meet, that we can be prepared to discuss. Some of the other process improvements that we've been putting in over the last year is a rules revision imposing a 120-day limitation on Plan Commission review of proposed projects. So, for example, I saw that Plan Commission, by ordinance, had no time constraints on them, and it just seemed to me that if it's a City Council final consideration, that they ought to give it some time frame in which they render a decision. And working with them, the Plan Commission updated its rules to have that 120-day limitation. Plan Commission rules also were varied, like the Sign Review and Appeals Board this last year, to do like we're doing with the Planning and Development Committee, where we have a staff overview presentation of what the application is about. Then we have a somewhat timed presentation by the applicant. I'll never forget the case, Alderman Tindem was here, where we heard Presbyterian Homes in front of the Plan Commission. It went on for an hour and 42 minutes before any citizen was allowed to come up and that sort of thing. So what we thought we'd do, and I think it was with Alderman Holmes, I did this with Planning and Development, so we kind of timed the presentations where it's a staff presentation, then the applicant presentation, then it's followed by citizens so they could speak to the point. And then the Plan and Development Committee, the Plan Commission has all the opportunities then, after they heard the citizens, say, well, what about that comment so-and-so brought up? The other thing, and kind of looking for your feedback here tonight, about 2 weeks ago we instituted a weekly zoning report of everything that comes in our office. I have operated a long time. Let us be the one that surprises you and not a citizen that's calling and saying, hey, what about this case that's coming in? So every case that's brought to us, we summarize this in a report. And the other important thing we do, we also identify when it's scheduled before, or tentative scheduled before the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Site Plan Review and Appeals Board, et cetera. So those are some of the improvements that we put in so far, but I think with Spark, the way it was originally set up, with a few tweaks, that could be more of an interagency review group. And with that, I'll let Dennis Marino, who's helped design this, and with, matter of fact, Walter Halen, walk you through how we've done this now with 3 test cases this last year, which was Focus, Central Street Station Apartments, and then the Amley project. Dennis?
Thank you, Steve. Good evening. Dennis Moreno, Manager of Planning and Zoning. It's been my pleasure to work with Steve and Walter in terms of testing out our process improvement that we're proposing and sharing with you tonight. That was also described in the packet in a memorandum. And we've done this in 3 cases, most recently with the Focus development taking over the old Sienna project, and also with Central Street Station Apartments, and we also did it somewhat with Amley as well. And what we're proposing here tonight is making site plan a much more in-depth analytical body. It's always had the function of interdepartmental sharing of information, but as Steve said, for many of the departments, they're seeing a plan at the first time when they show up at a meeting. So we want to change that pretty dramatically and be able to get elevations and much more detailed plans to all the relevant departments a week in advance. We also will share that with the ward alderman at that point as well, so you'll have elevations and detailed plans as detailed as you would like. Certainly that's available at that point. But again, the emphasis is making a process that's currently useful and has been useful for some time much more useful, because what happens currently, and this has been going on for years with site plan, is that after that initial meeting, then the applicant, after they meet, on Wednesday afternoon with site plan, they then go and meet with each individual department. And what we want to do is enable each department to bring to the site plan meeting their issues that they discuss among themselves in each department a week in advance, and then each department can understand what the other department's thinking and concerned about or excited about, and we can also share that with the applicant at that point. The other twist that we're proposing with this is that, first of all, site plan would meet with the applicant, much like we do now, but again, much more in-depth. And then after we're finished with the discussion with the applicant, staff from the various departments would meet among themselves without the applicant present to determine some things that they need to work out or some options they want to consider. So I think that would be very helpful. After that preliminary site plan meeting, we would post notes and outcomes on the city's website and share that with the city council as well. So you would see it before it went on the website, but it would go on the website very quickly. The other thing that we're looking to do is clearly with things like special uses, plan developments, and major variations. Those still would go through a public site plan review process, much like what we have now. The preliminary would be in a staff working group with the applicant, but the recommendation to be made by site plan would be in a public setting, much like what you have now on Wednesday afternoon. That way, for the projects that have the most visibility, the public at large is still able to get information and come to those meetings if they wish. For, again, the as-of-right developments that we're handling through this revised interagency process, citizens would also be able to get information about those applications through the zoning office as well. So that's a very quick summary of where we are at this point, but we've been very pleased with how this worked with Focus and also with Central Street Station Apartments, because we were able to get into much greater depth with all the public works issues, the zoning issues, as well as the utility issues, and also fire issues are very important as part of this process. Let's see if I do this right.
Click to the right, okay. This, again, I won't go through every sentence of this, but this gives you some idea of some of the process we're following. The first bullet talks about, again, getting that coordinated preliminary city response to the proposed project. We don't always hit that 100% right now, and so we do want to improve that. We also, in the second bullet there, want to make sure the ward alderman, where that proposed project is located, really has the best information available a week in advance of the actual meeting occurring. And then the third bullet deals with the reporting function I described, where we will share our outcomes with the alderman, some notes as well, but also post it on the city website. The first bullet on this particular screen talks again about the plan developments, the special uses, and the major variations, all of which go on to other bodies. Plan developments and special uses, of course, go on to City Council ultimately. Major variations do not unless they deal with height or parking relief. But in this case, there would be a process at final, when the recommendation's made, very similar to what we have now, but the preliminary would be in this very detailed, very involved technical working group, staff working group. And again, all other final approvals, where we're working in this interdepartmental working session would also be on the city website as well. The process improvement, as I've described, would reduce the number of meetings for applicants. We think we could get a lot more done in this expanded site plan, working with the departments who have enough time to analyze and get into the issues in advance of the meeting with the applicant. We also think that there'll be a better quality of discussion between the applicant and the city at these meetings, and also a much better discussion, more formal and also informal discussion among the city department representatives. We think that, as Steve said earlier on the fourth bullet here, SPARK could become a more effective problem-solving interagency consensus group. Sometimes we do get surprised. One department may not mention an issue at site plan, but then it comes up 60 days later, and that's something we're trying to avoid by getting everything on the table early. And last but certainly not least, producing more effective and timely communication with aldermen and the mayor and other elected officials. So I'll stop at that point.
Thank you. Other questions? Alderman Rainey?
Hi, Dennis. Well, I've been to site plan a few times, and I'd like to know, what do we do to make the public aware of site plan and appearance review meetings? Are there signs posted in people's lawns when they're going to appear before site plan?
No, there's no legal notice requirement for site plan at all, like there is for a major variation being heard by ZBA or a special use. But we do have a listserv where people sign up for it, and we send them copies of the agenda.
I would just like to offer what I mean to be constructive criticism. When an alderman goes to site plan, or at least when I go to site plan, the room is set up so the applicant and several others have their backs to the audience. It is a square table set up, and so the audience is really, it appears to be very unwelcome at site plan. We sit back. I've actually been told at a site plan meeting, we don't usually let aldermen speak here. And that is really pretty offensive, because I think at any public meeting an alderman ought to be allowed to speak. I've always been allowed to speak, but it is very apparent in some cases that it is unwanted. And of course, I only have appropriate things to discuss. So that's one thing I'd just like to share with you, that it does not appear to be public friendly, and I don't feel welcome there at all. And the discussions are very much inward and not outward. You can't see the documents that the applicant brings, for example, display boards and things, because the back is to you. You have to get up and, impose and walk around the table. So that's one thing. I'd like to know, this case that came to Zoning Board of Appeals the other night on Hastings, is that the street? The Steve Knutson architect?
Hartzell, I believe.
Hartzell, where the people wanted to put a second floor addition on, and because it was a very old house, the way the property was sited on the lot caused a bunch of issues, and the appeal to begin with. Did Site Plan and Appearance Review review that project?
Yes, they did, and they recommended approval.
They recommended approval. I found there to be a huge disconnect between Site Plan and Appearance Review and the Zoning Board of Appeals, and I'm just going to use this one. I'm sure there have been many others. And I'm just wondering, is there any communication prior to, it appeared to me as though ZBA was reading the stuff for the first time. I'm sure they weren't, but that's the way it appeared. There were huge gaps in the discussion because people were reading, and it was as though nobody had talked to them about the fact that Site Plan and Appearance Review felt this project was approvable and acceptable. And I just wondered how you communicate with them other than a memo.
Right. Certainly the memorandum and the packet material are critical in that communication, but the chair is briefed on cases before the meeting. Zoning Board of Appeals, as you know, has 7 members. Sometimes it's a function of which 4 members are there that night. Sometimes we get all 7. But in the case of this particular application, there was a last-minute change by the architect to the design and site plan. So some of the scurrying about that you did see that evening was related to those being passed out.
So Site Plan never saw the change?
Site Plan did not see the change, but recommended the initial, and I would think, certainly I would have voted in favor at Site Plan of the revised plan as well.
I was just wondering how the connection worked there.
Thank you for your comments about room design. No one's raised that before, and that's something we can do something about pretty quickly.
Maybe nobody felt as paranoid as I, but it was really uncomfortable. Have you ever noticed that? Yeah.
Alderman Holmes?
Well, I wanted to just compliment you on the plan, because I'm real excited to be able to get information before.
Exactly.
Because you're absolutely right.
Michael?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
Alderman Holmes, you're one of the ones I thought about.
Yes.
I think about every one of you has called me and said, Steve, I didn't know that was on the Spark agenda.
Right.
What's the deal here? And so it's scurrying around.
Well, I mean, this kind of thing makes it real easy now for me to keep track of, and I really do appreciate the information about the zoning and what's pending, because a lot of times, I mean, I know it and then I forget it, and so just looking at it weekly now, it keeps it in my head in terms of what I'm thinking about, what I need to follow up on about particular things in my ward. So I think this is great. I certainly congratulate you all, because this is much better communication with us.
Thank you. And Dennis and I had also talked about doing a hyperlink to the site plan. So with that report, you'll get them electronically and then be able to click open and see what the site plan looks like, kind of a thing. So we're still working on that, but really we wanted tonight to talk about some of the improvements that we've done already, but this, like all the other committees before you, with this year's work plan, we wanted to kind of reorganize this a little bit. And I agree wholeheartedly with Alderman Rainey, because I'll go infrequently, but I do go, and it's the same. They'll be talking about plans on those tables that I have no clue what it looks like and what they're pointing to. So we can do that. We did that with the Economic Development Committee, if you remember. We moved it to room 2200, and we go with the projectors now, and I think we can do something like that.
Yeah, that I think that's a real good suggestion, Alderman Rainey, because you're sitting out there, and, I mean, I have to say that I haven't felt unwelcome when I raise my hand to say something. I have been allowed to speak, but it's not our meeting, and I mean, I understand that. And I think that, but you feel like you want to let your constituents know sometimes, and I just find out sometimes if I'm looking at the email, I see it and I might just jump up and run up because it's in my ward, whereas I know other people would be interested if they knew that this was happening. And sometimes I think it will save problems down the road, because if you know that there are going to be issues in the beginning, they can be dealt with way before, they come before any other body.
Alderman Rainey?
Well, just one thing about commenting at these meetings, if you're an alderman, and that is that there are some times when, and you're only there because it's something in your ward that you know all about. So you sometimes have information that is helpful that maybe the applicant isn't quite sharing, or you need to support the applicant on something, and the committee doesn't know what you know. So, but I did want to say that Bobby sends out notices of the agenda and minutes. It's like clockwork. It's religious. She's very consistent, and it's very much appreciated. I mean, there's no reason why any of us, unless we don't open the email, would miss a ZBA appearance by anybody. But you're right, the rest of the world, unless we tell them, doesn't know. Or unless they've signed up for something, yeah.
If I could add one additional thing quickly. Single-family housing, new construction is currently not reviewed by site plan, and in our process improvement proposal, we very much want to do that in site plan, more as a coordinating function than as an approval function per se. And because we tend to, at this point, review that separately in departments, obviously there's some coordination there through the permit process, but we really would like to get our site plan group together focusing on new construction, single family when those come in, because that group process, I think, could really enhance it and help us expedite responses to aldermanic questions as well as citizen questions that we get increasingly on Monday and Tuesday mornings.
I would welcome that as well. I've had, there is a little mini boom in the 6th Ward of new residential construction, and a lot of the issues I've been dealing with in the last month or so have been, could have been prevented with a little more communication. And neighbors of the construction, adjoining properties to the construction site have a lot of questions, and if they're being built as of right, then I have to go to Dennis, and we have to sort of dig through and see what what information they need. But having all that information and having the groups work together, I see that will certainly eliminate some of the problems I've been having in recent weeks. So that's a terrific idea. Alderman Grover?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a more recent, frequent attendee at the Spark meetings, I do appreciate all these changes, which I think are very intuitive. It always seemed as if those meetings were not quite ad hoc because everyone came prepared, but not as well prepared as they could come to the meeting. And I think this will professionalize the work of the Spark committee in a way that everyone comes ready to make a decision. There won't be so many second meetings to follow up what didn't get resolved in the preliminary meeting, I suppose. So this will be really good. And with room design, I think you'd probably still need the big table, because I haven't been to a Spark meeting that didn't have big plans being passed around and slid across the table. Would very much appreciate that. My question, I did have a question, is what is the enabling ordinance or the enabling rule or regulation that creates Spark? Is it based in ordinance, or is it based really in policy and procedure of the city department?
It is based on an ordinance. It's Chapter 17 of the City Code, and it basically created site plan as an interdepartmental working group, had no public notice requirements, not even a public meeting requirement as part of that. Its purpose was really to address what we're trying to address on a greater depth basis now, which is departments needed to focus as a group together on inbound projects.
To streamline the process for the applicants, will there be revisions to the ordinance as a...
No. We worked with law throughout this process. We actually been, Dennis and Walter's been working with the agencies, and we had a big department head meeting on it about a month ago as well for the last several. But in working with the law, the changes and suggestions for enhancements we're talking is already within the ordinance. We do not have to make these changes. So again, that's why I was talking to Manager Bobkowitz about bringing this to you as our work plan to try this on this next year, see how it works, make sure you're informed as soon as we are. These things come up here, and then if further revisions are needed, then we would come back for a change. But the suggestions we've got right now do not need ordinance revisions.
And what's been the feedback you've gotten from applicants on these 3 cases where you've tested the new process? Has it been...
Very positive feedback. Again, most recently with Bob Horn on Central Street and with Tim Anderson and Justin Pillay at Focus. They really like the fact that we, essentially walk through the process pretty quickly in greater detail, and then in some cases, I went with each of them to meet with other departments after we had this more in-depth site plan set of meetings.
So the sense is this is a customer service, really. The Spark Committee is, and this is better customer service for our applicants.
We think so.
Yeah.
And not only that, coming to decisions much quicker in the process as opposed to, like I said, literally, it was meeting with one agency and then being sent to another. We'd all do it right there together in a review with them, and then a review out, and then they'd have a chance to come back and present right there. So, and we'd keep these Wednesday schedules too to make, to keep everybody. So we'd organize it a little bit different, where we'd have the cases that are going to be brought to you as a special use, but also the interagency review. So it'd go a little longer, and that's what everybody liked. All the departments liked the notion of being able to roll up their sleeves and deal with the project, and one-on-one with
Make
each
the
other.
decision and move it on to the next,
Next
body
step,
or the next
yes.
right. Thank you.
Any more questions? Someone like to make a motion?
They move to just approve?
Just move to approve
the proposed site work plan?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. Next agenda item, amending ordinance 61-0-11 to reflect the name change from Evanston Housing Commission to Housing and Homeless Commission. Mary Ellen, do you...
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, this is implementing something that the Rules Committee has already agreed to. We just need to formalize it to move forward to council.
Okay.
I move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have a small presentation of the Evanston 150th anniversary logo.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, good evening. Back in April, we came to you to discuss next steps with the celebration of the 150th anniversary of the city of Evanston. As you know, there has been a citizen group that's been working over the last several months on a community-wide celebration, but based on your discussion back on April 2nd, the Rules Committee asked that we look at some options for the city's celebrations of this, and those options really looked at a logo that would be used, and either to embrace the community logo that has been developed, or to, or to come up with one of their own. And Alderman Tendam at the time in April volunteered to convene a small staff committee to see if we could come up with something different that would incorporate the city of Evanston, where only the word Evanston is included in the logo from the Evanston 150 community group. So that process was started. Maria Villegas of our staff, who is a part-time graphic designer who's been doing a lot of work for us with posters and Parks and Rec brochure, a lot of work citywide, working with Alderman Tenda, myself, Kate Todd of my office, who has been on this larger celebration committee we'll talk about in a little bit, came up with 3 logos, which you see here on the screen. Alderman Tenda Tandem, you may wish to talk a little bit about the process that brought these logos before the committee this evening.
We narrowed it down to a few that we thought were very concise and direct. One of the reasons we are looking at developing our own logo type is that the Evanston 150 doesn't really provide a lot of information in its identity as to what we're celebrating. And I think that we have a limited amount of time and space to really make this point. And I think this, something concise like this that either has the city logo and symbol or simply the city name celebrating 150 and then obviously or the dates or referring to the sesquicentennial, I think gives the viewer a pretty clear understanding of what we're celebrating. The colors of these logos are actually a little more brilliant than what you see on the screen. My preference would be to keep it even very short and sweet, like the middle one, B, which simply uses our type setup for the city of Evanston. It doesn't include the lighthouse and environment. For one reason, I think that it looks like it doesn't necessarily work in a negative form. It looks like it's covered in snow. So it'd be interesting. I'd like to hear what others think, if we're on the right track, and if we should, do this independently of the Evanston 150 organization.
And perhaps we could show the other, Mr. Chair, the other logo. I think you're familiar with it. The Evanston 150 group has sort of modified it a little bit. And at an appropriate time, Mr. Chair, I'd like also to talk about the celebration component of that. Mrs. Todd has been representing the city in those discussions. We want to bring the council up to date on those efforts as well.
Alderman Grover?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for all your work on this, your thoughtfulness. I had a question actually for Mr. Smith from Evanston Now, whom I understand did a survey among readers about the different logos, and I wondered if you could share with us what the survey results were as of this minute.
And Gavin, could you put the other?
Just as another data point for us.
Please identify yourself for the record, sir.
I'm Bill Smith from Evanston Now, and the results of the poll at the moment, with 122 people voting on it, 35 votes for Design A, 43 votes for Design B, 21 votes for Design C, and 23 votes for Design D. So that's the result at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Alderman Holmes?
I would move that we accept Design B. I'm sorry, my mic's off again. I go with the poll, but I had it already circled. B. I really like B.
Alderman Nguyen, agreed?
No, I agree with you, Mark. I think that a lot of people don't know what the 150 is, and sesquicentennial is a big mouthful.
Yeah.
We don't need the logo. I think the middle one gets the message across. I agree with Alderman Holmes. And you.
Alderman Fisk?
I just had a question. We've trademarked Evanston, is that correct? We have a...
The TM comes from the work that was done on the original logo, so the typeface in that area is part of a series of trademarks that were made when the logo was originally created. So the City of Evanston, not the words, but in that font and in configuration, has been what's been trademarked.
Okay.
So we have that separately as well as the mark in a couple different configurations.
Okay. I like the word sesquicentennial. I just like it. It's a nice word.
Alderman Grover?
Thank you again. In the final logo, would we center the dates
Yes.
down below? And my other question is, tell me again, where are we going to picture this logo? Besides city stickers, utility vehicles, where should we start imagining where this logo goes as to whether it fits?
Well, I think aside from print materials that we send out, I think we need to consider the biggest bang for the buck, and I think vehicles do get do extend that image all over the city. Obviously, city stickers, things like that, that come out to most residents. From there on, we can take it as we see fit, or as we see we have the money to spend. But I think that any of these, especially would work in any of those fashion.
And how long would we be displaying this logo? Just for 2013, or will this be semi-permanent around Evanston?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I think our plan would be that we would get it up and around soon through the end of next year. If you recall, if you look at the minutes, there was also a discussion led by Mayor Tisdall regarding the whole issue of signs and entryway signs and how many signs there are. And after that discussion, the Design Evanston community organization met with the mayor and asked to be involved in sort of a larger discussion regarding this. And we'll be coming back to you with the conclusions of that discussion. But certainly they felt it was appropriate that the logo replace the entryway signs, the metal entryway signs, through the course of the year, that would be an appropriate thing to do. So it would be entryway signs. I think there's been interest in having vehicles. We'll likely make flags to fly from the various city facilities. The vehicle stickers, the council previously had already decided to use to the celebration of the 150th anniversary for the sticker for next year, so we're just waiting on a decision for the logo. So those will be the things. We've also talked to Catherine Hurley and I about a reusable shopping bag that we could put the logo on and perhaps raise a little money for an appropriate cause with that. So with your direction, we'll get started on it and have it around town.
Alderman Rainey?
Well, I don't mind that. I like that we don't have the lighthouse logo on it. The color, though, I think is just gross.
The actual colors are a lot cleaner and more brilliant than that.
How can we see them?
Kate, did you bring some printouts? We debated about printing out copies versus putting it on the screen.
But if that,
But the blue is the blue, the royal blue that we use in a regular basis. The green we tried. The individual who designed the city logo, Carol Niger, who is a Evanston graphic artist, was part of the Design Evanston group that's been working this summer on entryways. And when we showed these to them, and she was part of the group yesterday, we wondered where the green came from, because the green is on our city vehicles. And so we tried to replicate, I guess, sea and land, lake and land, rather, was where the green came from.
That green's not so bad.
So that's the green we intend. I think the print that Mrs. Todd's brought, and I apologize, we didn't have more copies. Kate was right and I was wrong. That will be more of those standard colors. So that would be, reproduced. Again, I think the sticker would end up being vertical versus horizontal, the vehicle sticker. So we would keep the proportion, but it would be flipped. So that would be something a little different. But that's where the colors came from.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask another question? Regarding where this will be, the city sticker is great, and we all supported that, but nobody can see the city sticker as you're zooming around town. I really think one of the best branding pieces in this town is Dance Center Evanston's magnetic square on the back of everybody's car. You know what I mean? It's like a 3x3 magnetic
Or the ETHS
square.
Wild Kids.
Pardon me?
The
And
ETHS
I saw the Wild Kids one the other day, too, right next to a new Trier one on the same car. It was amazing.
How did the car move?
I just stood and looked at it.
The karma would keep it from coming.
I don't know if it said that, but they're just the best displays. And
Would you like us to make a
bumper
magnet
stickers.
like that?
Pardon me?
Would you like us to make a magnet like that?
Yeah,
We'll make a magnet like that.
It's just great. And it doesn't stick to your car. You can take it off. You can put it on your other car. You can put it any place. Yeah. So I highly recommend a car magnet, which will last. I mean, after, a bumper sticker will shred.
Any other comments, questions?
So, Mr. Chair, I think it'd be appropriate if there was a motion. I think there was a motion. I don't know if it was
Was there a
Second.
motion?
Alderman Holmes made.
I think Alderman Nguyen seconded. Did you?
Oh, okay.
I think it should say 100.
Then those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The second part of our report, I'll ask Mrs. Todd to come to the microphone, deals with the celebration aspect of this. The Evanston 150 community organization has been attempting to develop some citywide celebration issues, some events. And Kate, if you wouldn't mind giving a brief overview of the discussions so far on that point?
Sure. I'm Kate Todd. I'm the executive assistant in the city manager's office. Thank you for having me. I don't usually get to do this, but I've been going to the meetings of the working, we're calling ourselves the working group, volunteer organization of about 20. It includes people like Lori Osborne from the History Center, Patrick Keenan-Devlin, who's been on the steering committee, people from the Music Institute, Karen Danzig-Lyons is joining the group from the library, and numerous other people. Emily Guthrie, who is trying to resurrect First Night, and plans actually to do a mini version this December, hopes to do a mini version this December in the hopes that it will launch itself to a bigger version. Anyway, we've been trying to do a couple things. One is identify big events that we would like to use to celebrate the 150th anniversary. We've also been trying to think of things that need to be done to publicize and whatever the events that are happening. And, maybe sort of prepare a calendar or whatever. So there's been suggestions for establishing some kind of a schedule and the big events, of which they were thrilled to add Bike the Ridge to that list. So, we're working on that. Am I missing something that?
Well, and I think a real main point is that there are no large events that have been contemplated, that there are all of these organizations that are talking and participating are looking to perhaps brand or co-brand some of their existing events throughout the year with this, but there are some ideas that are percolating. And so another recommendation before you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, is to put some money aside in next year's budget, so as those plans come to fruition, that there is some money available. In talking with Mayor Tisdall, I think there may be some opportunities to be supportive of the 4th of July event with some funds. So would make a recommendation that we be directed to put $25,000 of one-time money aside that would be available to the council as these requests come to you. And then also that the city have one formal recognition of the anniversary, and that is to organize a luncheon next fall that would invite all living former aldermen and mayors of the city of Evanston to come together with the larger community for a more formal celebration and charge admission and have basically the admission costs cover the expense of that lunch. But that would be the city of Evanston's formal corporate recognition of the 150th anniversary. So, Mr. Chair, those are two additional recommendations.
Well, maybe could I just add also that I think the group I'm working with, this working group, really doesn't have any funding. I mean, the money that was spent on the steering committee and the 10 great ideas and all that money was funded for that, and that's kind of gone. Those groups are out on their own working. So this group is really more managing it, trying to do it with no money. I think that they would like to have some kind of a budget for publicity purposes, if nothing else. I mean, I think they've got great support from, like, the Roundtable is willing to help out and, do things, but any kind of publicity, whether you're making posters or, I don't think they envision banners particularly, but some kind of way of letting the community know on a regular basis, oh, this is what we're doing this month or this quarter or whatever. I think that would be appreciated too. So it's just a volunteer organization, so it really doesn't have any official standing.
Alderman Rainey?
Well, I just hope that we don't do any big, elaborate, singular events, but pump up the ones that we currently have and really use them as, a real springboard to getting more people involved in more things that are going on in Evanston. And also, I hope you mentioned First Night. I know it's a wonderful concept, but it is so darn cold. And it is we just have the most beautiful summers here. And I just hope we use our summer events to summer and fall, spring, summer and fall events, and not try and plan something in the winter. It's just so cold.
Something warm in the winter.
Well, that would be First Night. They'd be their own independent thing. So it's not this working group doing that.
That's just how I feel about it.
Mayor Tisdall?
I just wanted to be sure you knew, Kate, that the 4th of July... Sorry, 4th of July parade folk are very interested.
Oh, yes, they've been coming to the meetings.
Perfect.
Yeah. I have the list. I could read them all.
No, it's all right.
But is that the theme this year?
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
They're already on board.
I didn't know if that was a secret.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe one way to tie together the 150 theme to all these events is have something that passes from event to event, like an Olympic torch or a flag or a banner or a mascot or something that makes a celebrity appearance at every event and generates, excitement or awe or something. I don't know. I'm going to move to support the allocation of $25,000 for citywide anniversary observances.
Second.
Any discussion? Do we need a roll call vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
None. And I hope we'd look for opportunities to work up 150, to find the 150 angle in every event, beyond just those that this working group has identified.
Well, the Women's Club has been at meetings,
Right.
League of Women Voters is celebrating 100 years of women getting the right to vote. Women's Club is 125 years of existence. So, there's all
went
these.
50 years without women able to vote here.
Guess so.
Thank you, Kate.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
And, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, is there any thought about a luncheon?
Oh, that was a separate motion? You don't need a motion, do you?
General direction would be nice.
A luncheon
If there's no objection, then we'll just move forward with it.
For all current and former aldermen?
And members of the public.
And members of the public? And mayors?
And mayors.
And
Yeah.
okay. I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, members of the committee, if I may, Mrs. Todd doesn't get to our evening meetings very often, but I really want to take this opportunity to recognize her outstanding work. She makes sure that the council agenda that you see every meeting is put together in a way that is legible, readable, understandable, easy for you to access and read, working first with Mr. Lyons and now with Joe McCrae. But Kate is one of those individuals that the city of Evanston would not be this community without her good and hard work. So I want to take this opportunity to thank her.
Okay, next item, aldermanic e-newsletters, ward meetings, and announcement postcards.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, this is an issue that we were asked to come back some months ago. There are multiple components to this. As you know, through our Citizen Engagement Division, we now have staff that are regularly available to help the mayor and aldermen with electronic newsletters and the organization and publicity of ward meetings. In order to provide timely service to all officials, staff is recommending that the City Council adopt a ward communications policy that establishes parameters for the use of these city resources. That policy, which is attached, talks about assistance that we would provide with the organization of ward meetings. Again, you all do things just a little bit differently, but we're there to help make sure that the dates get on the city calendar, that we provide help with handouts and sign-in sheets, and also can be helpful in securing space for the ward meetings. In the area of electronic communications, many of you now do ward e-newsletters. We would be asking in this policy that those be limited to one a month. We would have the opportunity for the aldermen to do this on their own if they wish, finish, or I know in the case of Alderman Burris, she has a community volunteer who does her e-newsletter. Alderman Holmes has a resident who helps with her printed newsletter. Otherwise, we're prepared to do that once a month. We just ask that it be provided 1 week in advance before the delivery. We also have been using, in the last several months, the same listserv for special announcements. Alderman Nguyen, for example, used it with some Trader Joe's information. I believe Alderman Tendem has used it for a couple of things. So there's that we're happy to do as well. I think that's been a very effective way to reach out to folks. We hope during the month of October to do a little bit of a campaign to get people to sign up for not only the various ward listservs, but also we do, all the community centers have them, of a sustainability listserv, an arts listserv, economic development, so we would work to get more people signed up for that. The third area is postcards. We have, in the last year or so, been doing a lot of postcards to help notify residents of community meetings, ward meetings, really without parameter. And since all of you have different numbers of ward meetings, we've tried to be as cooperative as we can be with no real parameters on the number of cards that go out. We're suggesting with this policy that each alderman would have 2 postcards mailed per year for a ward or community meeting, and that we be given 21 days in advance to put that together. There are multiple components to this. First, there's the printing of the card. We then use a database from our Community and Economic Development Department for addresses. That then goes to a third party, which addresses the postcards electronically and then takes them to the post office for a pre-sort first-class delivery. Generally speaking, we've, I think, had success with that. However, we've are always reminded about the proclivities of the United States Postal Service and have had some unfortunate experiences on that end, which I think we've tried to adjust, but in order to do it really properly, then it takes even more time. And so we would like the council to commit to a number for all of you, and if 2's not that number, that's fine, but we would just like to make sure there's a number, because right now the number of postcards we're doing for various aldermen vary, and we'd like to have some consistent policy. So those 3 areas, the ward meetings, electronic communications, and the postcard announcements, make up this proposed ward communication policy. And Mr. Chair, we would ask for the committee's consideration and direction.
Thank you. Thank you. Alderman Rainey?
Well, I'd like to know the value, the cost of these cards. And I have no problem with the electronic communication, and I really appreciate it when things get put on the city calendar. That's a great way to publicize a meeting. But I really would like to know what kind of money we're talking about for these postcards. If I were to ask for postcards for a neighborhood meeting, I would need like 100 postcards. I mean, versus meeting for a ward. I never, ever, hardly ever have a ward meeting. So I don't recall ever having postcards sent for anything in my ward. So I want to know the amount. I think if it varies that much, my recollection is we have something in our, didn't we pass something at one time where each alderman would have a certain amount of money to spend on communication for newsletters? Does anybody remember that? This council? No? Okay.
Alderman Rainey, let me give you just a sampling of the costs. To do a ward newsletter is approximately 3,600 pieces of mail. The cost to print the postcard is $425. The first-class postage without the sort is $1,092. The pre-sort...
It's just crazy. It's just absolute... I can't support this at all. I'm sorry.
...is $781.
It's crazy.
So the cost of total pre-sort postage per ward is $1,206.
I see the 420-something on the bills list occasionally, and it makes me nuts, but, yeah, we need to look into this a little bit.
Alderman Braithwaite?
answered my question. I was curious to know the cost involved with settling postage. I was aware of the printing. The postage does come as a bit of surprise, but I guess I'll speak to that. I think I've sent out maybe 2 or 3 mailers, and so when I look at this rule, I think about what I currently use, and I'll also think about, future council members and just how important it is to get the word out for meetings. So I'll need some time to think about the cost. That the cost of printing does come as a bit of a shock, but I think the value, to answer Alderman Rainey's question, particularly for someone like myself walking in position without having a tool to reach out to the world, it was very useful. And I was interested in raising that amount, but I'm a little bit hesitant now, just knowing the cost to mail the cards. But I do see a great value, and I've received a lot of good feedback from the residents who do receive that postcard, and I would ask the people on our council just to keep in mind I love the fact that we're developing an electronic newsletter, but I also have to be mindful and respectful that there are a number of residents that are in the 2nd and 5th Ward who are not online. So.
Absolutely.
But neighborhood groups
and that's what
have them hand out.
Alderman Holmes?
Well, Alderman Britwood, you're absolutely right. And, of course, I don't do an electronic newsletter. We have a newsletter committee that does our newsletter, and I have a number of people who don't get it online, although now the city is putting it online for me. I send that to Adelita, and she puts it online, but I print every month newsletters that we distribute. We have people who go out and take them to the barbershops and places like that where people can pick them up, or to the. But I mean, I just do that on my own. I've never asked the city to do that. I didn't know that we could ask the city to do that, but I wouldn't. I mean, I just do it on my own. But I guess my question is that you have your. Ann call them neighborhood meetings. I call them block club meetings because we usually do it by blocks. That the people who are the chairs or whatever they want to call themselves of those meetings usually get their information out. They do their own flyers and things like that. So I don't know. I think that it gives them a sense of ownership and responsibility in terms of, making sure that we have the people in those particular neighborhoods. Now, in addition, I do the ward meeting, and it's up to them if they want to come to the ward meeting or not. We try to get the chair people there so they can take the information back. That was the purpose of having the ward meeting, so that information could be shared. But I just don't see this. I think that's a lot of money to be spending, and I understand what you're saying. When you do come in, you have to figure out how you're going to reach your constituents. And I had to figure that out, and I figured it out which worked best for me, and I think we each have to do that. So I'm not, certainly would not object to somebody having it, but I think that the cost of that, and I'm multiplying that times 9, and I just think that that's a lot of money. I don't know if I could support that much money being spent, and certainly, I wouldn't want to use it.
Alderman Wynn?
Thank you. I think a couple of thoughts I've had on this are, I've had board meetings the entire 15 years I've been on the council, probably for the first, I think probably up until about 3 years ago, I flyered the ward myself with volunteers, paid for the flyers, then walked the ward. One of the issues I always ran into is that the 3rd Ward has a big belt right across the middle, if you think of it as a rectangle, of apartments and condos. And no faster would I have my notice taped up than by the time I passed back through the block, the janitor would have scrubbed it off. And so there are many, many people who lived in those places who never heard about any of my ward meetings unless they saw it in the paper, which some of those folks are transients. They didn't used to get the Evanston Review. Now, I do think that it is much easier to get in contact with people. But it was frustrating because people would not know. And because they lived in an apartment building, I didn't have access to their mail slot. My memory is, Alderman Rainey, is that under the rules, every council member had the right for one mailing a year. If, it may not be under the rules, but it was something that we had one ward mailing a year. And so what, I can remember one of the times what I did do was when I wanted to get my new email address out to people, was I used one of those one mailings a year to say, contact me by email. I do think, and I knew the cost of this already, because I remember back then how much it cost, and some of those things went to the 4th Ward and took forever. There's a whole bundle of them found in the back of the post office. I think the postcards are very, very effective, but they are very expensive. I get wonderful comments from people. Got your postcard, got your postcard, got your postcard. But I do think this is a lot of money. I think someone should check, because I think we do have something that permits one ward mailing a year. I didn't use it for the longest time, but then I finally did once or twice, and I have used postcards to great effect. But it is expensive, so I think that...
I thought it was an amount.
Can't hear you.
I thought it was an amount of money we allocated to ourselves.
She thought it was an amount of money. I actually think it was one word mailing, because it might vary slightly depending on how many people you had. But my memory was that it was $1,200 for just the postage. So that maybe it must have gone, clearly postage has gone up. So I think there's some value to being able to mail once a year to catch the people who've moved into your ward, who maybe are not tuned in. And I have a lot of those people in the 3rd Ward. I have lots of people who are computer savvy, and they email me and said, just found you, just moved in, I'm a new resident, hello, But, so that's my thought, is perhaps one mailing a year. I'm not sure how much we would all use them,
Alderman Grover?
I think, Alderman Nguyen, that was exactly my thinking, that with just one mailing a year, you can almost push the reset button and remind residents that ward meetings do happen. Here's how to look for them, and then you cover that at the meeting. That I expect to do 3 ward meetings this year, and this is maybe when and where they will happen. Look for them. Here are other ways to plug in and find out when I have ward meetings. So not every ward meeting would need the same written reminder delivered.
And this is how to
house.
sign up for my newsletter.
Right, exactly.
So here are all the various things you can sign up for at the city.
Right. Here are your resources, other newsletters, so maybe just once a year would do. And I agree that trying to set a budget for each ward's communications may not be workable, given the great variation in the number of addresses in each one of our wards. So,
Alderman Holmes?
I was going to suggest, too, that we take more advantage of the news media, the review, of course, but the Roundtable, Evanston Now, Patch, all of those are available to us, and I think that if we would just ask them, you know what you're going to meet. Mine is simple, third Thursday of every month. I'm sure that they would print those things for us and help get that information out. So that's another way in which we can get information out that doesn't end up costing, money. They do print them. So, that's just another way of helping, to get the information out to your residents for those who don't use the computer.
Anyone else? If we were to make a decision on this tonight, we would certainly amend what's been proposed by the staff to one mailing a year. Is that correct?
I think, don't you need to look it up? Because I think they're saying it's in the rules. I don't know, maybe we
It's not in the rules.
It's not in the rules?
There may be past practice, there may have been amended order of the council, but in my 3 years, I've never...
No, well, it's not since I've been on the council, but I, a lot of things have happened before I got here, so... Do you remember?
Madam Mayor?
When I started on the council, the same way that you did, Alderman Braithwaite, I was told that I could mail postcards twice a year. I guess I'm just better than you are, Melissa. I got them twice. I don't know, but I can't remember who told me.
I remember the
But nobody ever told me. But then that's not
Because that's
unusual
why
for
we
us.
Because I was taking all your postcards, Alderman
You were
Holmes.
taking all of mine.
I'm sorry, but anyway, that's...
I remember that too, Liz.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, we have talked, Mr. Swinkowski's here, the interim assistant engagement coordinator. We too hear from residents about the effectiveness of the postcards. And, from our perspective, twice a year is money well spent. I think we're trying to connect with people. We're trying, we have a wide variety of people who live in this community, not always tuned in to things, and I think that given the scope and magnitude of what we do, getting people to your ward meetings, Alderman Fisk had a ward meeting just last night, for a matter of fact. I mean, people are so anxious to... Without a postcard. And people are just so grateful to be there. I think, Alderman Fisk, there was at least 3 or 4 folks I had never seen before at your meeting, and the look on their faces to have, here's the alderman, here's the public works director, here's a police officer who knows every nook and cranny of the ward, is a very effective thing. So when you look at the cost associated to the larger city budget and, keeping people informed and all of the energy and effort this council's made to connect with your residents, I'll be honest with you, I don't think 2 is an overly excessive thing. And for those of you who don't need it or don't feel it's appropriate, I think that's fine too, because every ward is different and people communicate in different ways. So I would encourage the committee to reconsider the 1, and we'll be happy to work with you, perhaps to, if you wanted to do 1 a year that was, as Alderman Grover said, more of the reintroduction, here's ways to keep in touch, and then use another one for a meeting, maybe around budget time, maybe in the springtime. I think it's money well spent because of the feedback we've certainly have gotten, and I've seen all of you, I come to most of your meetings, with people who are not the same old committed residents. You get new people, and that's the key into them.
Alderman Nguyen?
Well, Wally, not to change my mind on this, but Wally brings up a good point. I did send out a postcard for a spring meeting. It was the night that it hailed. There were between 80 and 100 people there. I mean, it started to hail 10 minutes before the meeting, and I thought, well, it's going to be me and Wally and the person who opens the church. And 100 people, almost 100 people showed up. And a number of them came up to me and said, I've never been to one of your meetings before, but I got the postcard and decided to come. And I think that Wally does have a very good point on that. And I've had these all the time, but not at a specific time like Alderman Holmes does or Alderman Fisk does, because that's just, my life doesn't work out that well, in that organized a fashion. But that meeting particularly was just stunning. I mean, people decided to just put up their umbrella, and there was no parking. We had it at St. Luke's.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I do think there is a real efficacy to it. The other thing is the postcard arrives, people tack it up, and then they start emailing you on everything that they've been meaning to email you about, which is very useful. It's suddenly, every time they go out, I get a whole flurry of questions. Couldn't make it, but here's what my question is. So I amend it to 2. I go back to the staff's suggestion.
Seeing no other lights, would someone like to make a motion to approve the recommendation of staff for a
Ward communication policy.
Ward communication policy?
I move approval.
Second.
2.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
No.
2 opposed? Is that 2 opposed?
We have a memo regarding the cost of the...
Yeah, and put it up to the next meeting.
Thank you. We have new business. Does anyone have new business?
Carrie.
Sir?
No new business.
No new business. With that, would someone move for adjournment?
Second.
Thank you.
Thank you.